Hey everybody, Jordan Yates here. Welcome back to my channel and today's soldering project for beginners, which is going to be an LED lamp. This lamp is yet to come together, but I think it's going to be a really fun project because we have not one, but two levels of boards that we're going to be soldering. So if you want to go along with me and solder your own project or just watch because you enjoy the soldering process, then let's keep going. See you guys in there. Step one is going to be installing the diodes. You need to pay attention and see that polarity matters, which means the direction matters. So we're going to line up the black end on the diode with the white line on the PCB. Once you push it through, I like to lay down the leads so it will stay in place when you flip the board over and then begin to solder. Remember, you want to heat up the joint, which is the circle it's going through, and then solder it. And when you're done, clip off your leads, and that just about does it for our first components, D1 and D2. Now we're going to be doing R1 and R2. These are the 200 ohm resistors, and we're basically going to follow the same process again. We put the components through the holes, flip it over, lay the leads down, and then solder. And if you notice, it looks like I'm soldering fast. That is just because I have everything sped up ×6, or else this video would be super long. So now we're going to go in with R3 and R4. These are the 10 kilo ohm resistors. Same process again. Next up, we have our capacitor 5, C5, which is a 0.001 microfarad capacitor. This is a ceramic through-hole capacitor. We are going to once again get it on here and solder it. This is a quick and easy step. Next, I'm going to just push some of the components through and heat them up because they were not flush. Now we're doing the C1, 3, and 4. These are the 0.1 microfarad 104 ceramic capacitors. We are now going to put the surface mount micro USB 2-pin at the USB place on the board. This will be our first surface mount we're doing, although it is actually a through hole as well. So we'll flip it over and solder on the through hole components on the other side. This is how you will charge your lamp. How cool. Now we're going to cut this male pin connector in half. Tried to break it with my fingers, but it didn't work, so I just went ahead and used the tool I used to cut the leads off of my components and used it to cut this in half. You're then going to place it through the board, and this I found to be very tricky, trying to hold it in place and also solder. So I held it through one side of the board, just tacked on an end, and once I got it good enough, I was able to solder everything else. This second one, I tried to do something different and wrap it around. That way it would be easier to hold in place. This kind of worked, but basically just get one thing slightly tacked and you should be good. It could be a little tricky, but don't give up, even though you may drop it 100 times. Next, we're going to get the NE555 board and place it through on these connectors. See how the silk screen has the pattern that matches the indent on the PCB? Make sure those line up. This is important. We're then going to solder this on to the connectors, and then we will be good with this step. Great work. Now we have a socket that we're going to place into P2 and solder that on. It was pretty easy to hold it in place from the backside while I tacked it on and then soldered it the rest of the way. We're now going to get the other straight pin socket and push this through at P3. Make sure this is facing the right way. We want it to be facing outwards because it will be connecting. We're then going to solder this one on, which was another one I struggled a little bit to get tacked on, but once I did, it was easy going. Then we're going to get our first MOSFET and put it in at Q1. This is a very important piece, and luckily direction matters here, but the component is the same shape as the silk screen on the PCB, so just line it up with the half circle. Great work. Now we have our 100 microfarad electrolytic capacitor for C2. Once again, polarity does matter here, so make sure you are lining up the negative and positive sides correctly. You should be able to see it on the actual capacitor, which side's negative, which side is positive, and then the board will also indicate it too. Then we take the 3-pin male connector and push this through at P1. We want the long side sticking up because we are going to put another mini PCB on here. So work on that, get it soldered on in whatever way works best for you. There you go. Now we're going to take our 50 kilo ohm potentiometer and place it at our P1. Now this potentiometer is pretty cool because this is what we will be using to adjust the brightness of our lamp and turn it off and on. Now we're going to attach the pin connector to the small PCB and make sure it is facing outwards, get that soldered on, and then we will attach it using that 3-pin connector. Make sure that this is facing the correct way on the board, that way it fits when we put it in the lamp base. Great work, look how fun that is. It looks like it's just floating. Just wanted to adjust it a little bit. Now we're gonna break off the potentiometer. That came off really easily. Okay, next, my favorite part, diodes, aka LEDs, light emitting diodes. We're going to take the positive end, which is the long end, and put it through the positive hole. And then you're going to do it, gosh, I don't even know how many that was, a whole bunch more times. Put them all through one by one by one, and you can solder as you go, or you can do what I did and push them all through and then solder them all at the same time. Just make sure you pay attention and you are putting them in the correct way so you don't have to go back and fix it later, because that would be such a headache. Polarity really is so important with any kind of diode or, component that specifies polarity matters. Now, I don't fully understand what was happening here, but my solder was just not running smooth. I don't know if this is a testament to the board, because I was soldering for a while and using the same materials. The only thing different here was the board. So I brought out my soldering paste and it helped a little bit, but still my solder was running kind of odd. So I hope you don't run into the same issue that I did, but I decided to just power through and go with it. Luckily, in the end, it worked out just fine, but my solders looked so ugly. But I'm not going to have you guys watch me solder every single one, because I think that would be a little bit too redundant even for us beginners. Just know you want to solder them all. And continue to use your soldering paste if your solder also isn't running as smoothly, just like mine wasn't. So keep on to that, and then clip your leads off as you go per the usual. And when you're done, take a look at how gorgeous it is. LEDs are just the most satisfying thing to solder. So now this is something I just have never found a good way to do, but you want to connect the red wire to the positive terminal and the black to the negative. My favorite method of removing the rubber from the, or should I say the cover of the wire is just melting it off, because whenever I try to remove it with like wire strippers, these wires for these kits are always so weak that they end up just falling off. So they're really, really weak wires, and I found that melting the casing off is honestly the most effective way to do it. You may have a different preference, but for these thin ones, I suggest just melting it off. I think that it works best. And then you can pull it through all the way so it's very easy to solder and get connected. Great job. You can clip off any of the excess wire. Then you're going to push the wires through the lamp post, because remember, we are making a lamp. And I found this to be a little annoying because I did pull my wires apart at the end on both ends, and so I had a little bit of resistance here, but nonetheless I eventually got it all the way through. It just took quite a bit of pushing and pulling, but once it was through, it looked nice. I sat the board in and then placed on top of it the cover and got the fasteners and put them through each corner and fastened it on. This went pretty well and pretty quickly. Make sure you have your own screwdriver handy, because this kit did not come with one. Luckily, I just happened to have a whole bunch of small ones around, and they were really convenient for this. Great job. Now the fun part, where we're just connecting the main PCB to the little potentiometer. I think that this part's satisfying because it's not soldering, we're just connecting. Next, you want to fix the PCB to the actual lamp base. At first, I didn't realize how many different screws went in here, and then I went back and I was like, oh shoot, I missed a few. So I went back and added those in. Nonetheless, it's not the end of the world if you don't get them all in, because, you know, it should be stable. It's a pretty lightweight contraption. Now we're going to pull the wires through the top of the base and then attach it with a few fasteners to make sure that the base stays in place. I struggled on holding this in place just because it's just a lot of coordination for me personally, but screws went in just fine and we got it attached. Next, we're going to do the same thing to these wires, where I strip them of the casing and then I attach them to the main PCB. And once again, the red is the positive and the black is the ground, also negative. So pull these through, and I hate that I didn't have access to the back of this board. I kind of wish I had the option to do this part first before fastening this to the base, but I was too lazy to go back and redo it. Now we're going to connect the battery to the PCB. Hooray, we have power. Now, one last mechanical step. Let's get this board pulled through and fasten the top and bottom together. We are so close to our finished product, and at this point, I think the light was already turning on, but I wanted to save the reveal until I fastened everything together. And one final touch, put the knob on, and yay, look at it go. Flick it on, it works. Oh my goodness, this was so satisfying. It took me actually a while to do this project, so I was very happy to see that it worked the first time. I hope it goes well for you guys too. All right guys, and just like that, our project is done. It turned out well and it turned on the first time. So very excited about this. A lot of my LED projects did not go well the first time, but you know, keep trying, keep learning, and eventually it'll work out. So I hope you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.